Hi. So my chapter of review for Inside the Criminal Mind by Samenow, PhD, was Chapter 3, Parents Don't Turn Children into Criminals. So basically a little overview about this entire book is Samenow basically going over characteristics of different criminals, their thinking patterns, their thinking errors, where their cognitive processes are skewed, and that it's more of an internal fight rather than an external fight against criminal behavior. So basically, this means that he's just covering that even though a lot of people believe that nature is the cause of criminality, sometimes a lot of is internal. So even though a family could be from a less fortunate area, they could have 6 children. One of those 6 children commit crimes, while 5 of those are perfectly innocent and they don't do any crimes or anything like that. And so it's basically kind of just going over how those individuals create their behavior and how they continue their criminal behavior and mischief, and that's why we're going over that today. That a lot of the times people want to blame parents or blame the way that they were raised as to why they are criminals or why they do the things that they do, but in actuality sometimes it's based on the internal beliefs of the individual, and there's not really a lot of external factors that are contributing to their behavior. So basically we're just going to go over some of the main points within this chapter and going over why parents don't turn children into criminals. It's more of an internal growth rather than an external implication. So basically he begins off saying that criminals come from all classes, criminals come from all backgrounds, criminals come from any type of family type you could imagine, whether that be a single parent home or a happy 2-parent home. Criminals come from both sides of the track, both sides of town, both socioeconomic. A family could be rich and the child still acts out negatively, criminally, or the family could be poor and they still act out criminally. It really is not based off of the external factors that are attributing to that. So this whole chapter is showing examples of how these children act, and different criminally motivated individuals create conflict within their lives, within their family units. It's more of a strife caused from the child rather than strife caused from the parents to the child. So basically just going over that and letting us kind of read different examples of different family structures where the child is a delinquent and starts at a young age, continues to act out until adulthood, and then it also goes into cutting those ties with the parents and the children, and kind of drawing that line of where the parents kind of don't have any other choice than to let them go. They've reached adulthood. There's nothing else that they can do. They can't bail them out anymore. So basically, let's just start from the beginning of this chapter and work through it as to how he explains criminality in these types of children. So a major point is that these children choose the life that they want, even though they may be raised on a different part of town or not with a lot of money, not a lot of resources. They could act out the same way that a child in a family that has a lot of resources has. So he's just saying that the choice is up to the child on how they're going to react to situations, how they're going to handle their mischief, how they're going to handle different circumstances that which could lead them down a different path. So it also begins with saying that when a child becomes a delinquent and they have that delinquent behavior, their first victim is their parents. They sometimes are victims of abuse and they are victims of different things from their parents. He does not discredit any of that type of behavior in any type of circumstances that way, but he does mention a lot of the times that the parents are the victim to the child, that they are trying their hardest to be a good example, be a good influence in their life, yet everything that they do is just shot down by the delinquent child, and that there is nothing else that they can do. So a lot of the times the thought process is flipped, and there are cases that are like that. A lot of criminals come from abusive backgrounds, but a major part of them also come from normal backgrounds. It has nothing to do with that. Coming from Samenow's belief, his research, his studies, his experiences are that criminals are more internally based rather than outside, like I've been saying. So here, this next part of the chapter, he talks about Bill. This is an example of a delinquent, a juvenile delinquent, and just kind of his age of onset until the very end. So it talks about every incident that comes across, every type of therapy that the parents try to introduce, any type of intervention that was tried and failed, anything like that kind of he covers. He explains that to an outside person, Bill, the child, seems like a normal individual. He looks the part of a normal child. He has nice hair, is dressed well, dressed appropriately, but on the inside there is something a little bit wrong about Bill. He has a lot of anger issues built up towards his family. He doesn't respect them. He's always trying to get into little things, trying to open the liquor cabinet, trying to break into the liquor cabinet, stealing money from the wallet, different things like that, just continually growing, escalating until the point where the parents have nothing else to do. They take him to therapy, and there are different theories that are brought up. So in these theories, basically I'm going to go over a few of the theories and explain kind of where a lot of the general public believe criminals come from, and this is how Samenow kind of contradicts that and kind of shows that this isn't the only way, that these theories aren't the only things that could cause a child to be a criminal, that there are other internal decisions that the child makes that could make him into a criminal. So some of the things while they were in therapy, Bill's parents, they were told about these theories and some of the examples that, oh, this is why your child is acting this way, because you're acting this way. So the first one is basically the parents are not strict enough. So this is when they're very lenient, they don't care. You can see this with drug families where they're more interested in drugs than their child. This allows them to be very permissive. Going off of the four types of parenting styles, permissive is probably as bad as authoritarian. It's very not strict, lackadaisical, laissez faire on how they want to react to their child and how they're going to handle that. So when um, if something bad happens, they kind of are a pushover. They don't allow they allow their child to act in these certain ways instead of putting a foot down and kind of saying, no, I'm the parent, this is how it's going to go. So this is one of the theories, is that that type of behavior causes criminal mischief and criminal behavior as a child. Whereas in the case of Bill, this is not the case. They tried to be strict, they tried to put their foot down, they tried to set good examples for their child, for Bill, yet these things just didn't work out. Bill continued to be a nuisance, continued to be a delinquent, and things like that. It escalated and escalated, even though that they were strict. Um, the next theory, sorry, is that they secretly want him to act this way. So this theory was a little bit kind of psychologically interesting to look at. It kind of just said that everybody in the family unit wants to act the way Bill's acting, but they are constrained by social norms. So with that being said, they all want to have delinquent behavior. They all want to do what Bill's doing, but because they are restrained by societal norms, by the restrictions of the world, they don't act out on this way. So they push those feelings, push those wants onto Bill, and Bill is the scapegoat of the family. He is the one that goes out and does the things that they want to do, but they don't have the guts to do it. That's basically the second theory that a lot of therapists brought up to Bill's parents, was they had those thoughts, they had those feelings, they had those urges, but they didn't act on those urges, and so they've been pushing those urges onto Bill, which made him act that way. So it kind of turns the therapy session around from focusing on Bill to focusing on the parents and the other siblings and why they're thinking that way and why they're influencing Bill in that way. And then finally, the last theory is that the parents were setting too high of standards for Bill. His parents in this story were teachers. They both were teachers and they both did have high standards, but they weren't unreasonable. They were very attainable. The other children in the family were able to reach these goals. They were able to excel, those types of things, while as Bill couldn't quite meet those goals. Or so the theory goes, is that they weren't able to meet the standards and that the parents were disappointed, and that created more conflict and where the issues began. But looking into the story, looking into the case study here, Bill's parents did not have high standards. They did not have unreasonable standards that could be unmet by Bill. They were very realistic. They were very kind, compassionate, understanding, and they wanted Bill to succeed in the best way that he could. They didn't set unrealistic goals that he couldn't set himself. They set realistic goals for him to meet, and he just didn't want to. And there were many times that they were being soft, and he'd say, oh, they're just being soft. They would be harsh, and he would make fun of them for being harsh. It was a lose-lose situation for the family, and every therapist that they ever went to said so. They said it was their fault. But looking into the case study from Samenow's point of view is that it is not the parent's fault, and that internally the child has something going on inside of them that they can't fix. So basically, that's kind of how this chapter continues on. It just continues explaining different examples of how different delinquents act out against their parents, and that it was basically a lot of it is on the child's term, yet they're trying really hard to be in control of the situation. The parents try really hard to gain control of the child, but sometimes in these delinquent situations, they just can't. And a lot of therapists and other people look on these situations and want to blame the parents for these behaviors. But everything that Samenow presents, everything that Samenow believes and has researched states otherwise. That although nature and nurture do affect criminals and how they come to be, a lot of it is internal. And a lot of it is things that the parents just can't control. A lot of the things that they can't understand. So, like they said, a bad family could have 6 kids, and one of them was a delinquent, while 5 of them grew up to live successful lives and live out a positive life and overcome those issues and overcome those bad childhood memories, those types of things, whereas that one child will go to jail. So basically, that's what this chapter covered, is the criminality of children and how it's not always the parents' fault and it's not always how they were raised. That looking at who the child is internally is a really good start at how to understand how these criminals think and how they need to be handled and rehabilitated. So basically, that is chapter 3. Parents don't turn children into criminals. Children are just criminals sometimes. And he finished up by saying that if your child does act out in these ways, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be criminals for life. That means they could just be going through a phase and they could overcome it. It's just these special cases where they start at the age of onset and they continue and increase, and level testing. They want to risk everything around them, and that is where the issues come about. It's not necessarily the little petty crimes where they're just going through a phase during their preteens. It's when it continues, pushes the limit, that's when it becomes an issue. So basically, that's chapter 3. And it's very, very introspective, very inside the criminal, inside the child's mind. Has nothing to do with the family unit or anything from the outside looking in. It's more of inside out. So that's basically what Samenow was saying in this chapter. Thank you.